close next door to Shallcross, and like many of her contemporaries, often played in the grounds. Chris has thoroughly researched the history, and there are few better qualified people to tell the story of the ancient manor. We have on sale some reprints of articles about both Shallcross and Yardsley halls. Please take a look at our bookstall after Chris's talk. We're making a video recording of tonight's presentation, and we hope this will be available to view on our website and on YouTube. This is our last meeting until September the 6th, when local historian David Kitching will talk about the Macclesfield Canal and its nearby mines and quarries. We're in the process of changing our Facebook page to a public group, which everybody will be able to contribute to, so please join the discussions and write about anything relevant to the village. This year is the 200th anniversary of the founding of the first place of worship in Furness, Vale. So to commemorate this, the History Society has mounted a notice board on the Yardsley Lane house where it began in 1822. And we'll use that notice board to promote our meetings and publications, and also to tell some stories of local history. So ready for Chris to start her talk, and then after the talk, please help yourself to a cold drink and a biscuit or two from the front. Okay, over to you, Chris. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be sitting down because I need to operate my little thing. Can you all hear me, though? This is normal kind of voice. Yeah. So, welcome, everybody, to my first and only ever talk on this matter. I'm the only person who's discovered what I'm going to be talking about now, so you won't know if I'm saying anything wrong. So no one's going to contradict me. But I spent a lot of time on this subject, and last year I made a remarkable discovery, which I believe no one else has ever pieced together, the mystery of Shallcross Hall / manor. So, here we go. Here we have Shallcross. This, you might be very envious to know, is the view from my kitchen window. I'm on one side of the village of Whaley Bridge, and on the other side of the village there, some of you will recognise this scene, it's Shallcross Estate. Oh, actually, what I've got is a little pointer. I've got some little pointers. I shall get that out very shortly. That's Elna Lane there, which some of you may know, and of course, I'm not going to assume everybody knows this. So where I'm on Orchard Road there, this is my view. The houses down the bottom there, that's Buxton Road in Whaley Bridge. On the left is Old Road. And the middle distance there is Vaughan Road and Manor Road. And the meadows there are the two farms, which that little estate there, the white houses, are sandwiched against. That is Shallcross Estate, where I was born and raised until I was 16. And grew up and did all of our playing up there. It was a world in its own right. What you see there is a beautiful view, and I have to agree, it really is a beautiful view, isn't it? Very enviable. But what I see is a Roman road. I see two ecclesiastical boundaries, and I see three halls dating back to the 12th century, the 16th century, and the 18th century. 17th century, I don't know, there's so many centuries. But yes, I just see. The little white building over on the right there, can you see it just in between the trees? That is what remains of Shallcross Hall farm. So as we go through now, you've got the scene there. So it's up a hill, there's nothing there just but the houses there. Shallcross stone is very well known nowadays. It didn't used to be until recently, i.e. until the advent of the internet, but it's become quite an iconic little stone here. This is what the word Shallcross is made from. Shackle is a Danish origin word for the pin that fastens on to a belt buckle. So it's squarish at the bottom, it's wider, and it's got a tapered point at the top, and you put it through and you fasten it on, and that is a shackle pin. It's a cross. It used to be a preaching cross. And in the Mercian times, it was a boundary stone. And it gives its name to the people of Shallcross, Shawcross, and about 36 other names which have evolved out of this stone now. It's at the junction of a Roman road, the Manchester to Buxton Road, and an ecclesiastical boundary between Cheshire and Hope. And I've seen Mr. Winfield over there. There's a local author, Joyce Winfield, who's written a book on the Shallcross stone. And there's not a lot of history about this stone at all. It's quite scant. Nevertheless, it's quite an important marker post. Sven, Svanus, Svein, Sven. Well, Sven is a Scandinavian name, and I'm going to think of him as somebody from Scandinavian origin. Sven of Shallcross was granted lands up the hill there in the 13th century, in the days of King John and Henry III, via William Peveril II. William Peveril I was the one who established Peveril Castle in Castleton and the Priory of Lenton in Nottinghamshire. He owned all of that land in Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. Sven was granted the land for favours, I can't remember what it is, but he became the forest bailiff. The King's foresters were very important people. The foresters who established the church and chapel in Leafrith, these are all really highly respected people. They were in charge of all of the poachers, all of the King's deers, because it was all the Forest of the Peak, the King's hunting grounds. Sven was the first of 17 heirs to the title of Shallcross. 17 heirs. That's an awful lot of people. And there's an awful lot of people, and all the information can be garnered from this ancient document, about 125 years old, called a lineage of the very ancient family and surname of Shallcross or Shallcross of that manor. So, the book, well, it is only a book. It's not really a book, to tell you the truth. There was an article submitted in 1896, written but in 1905, to the Derbyshire Archaeological Journal by this author, Ernest Gunson. He was a Victorian architect, and the Gunson architects are still in business to this day in Manchester. His father was an eminent architect, William Telford Gunson, and he authored several articles to the Derbyshire Archaeological Journal and other counties where there were halls of eminence, of really old standing that nobody had written about before, about the architecture of these old halls. And from that one document, it's plagued my life for many years on to what on earth this man actually meant when he was writing about them. Because he was writing as he was actually there at Shallcross Hall. It didn't make any sense. So over the years I've gone over and I've gone over and I've gone over, trying to work out what on earth he's saying. He cited from this book, The Pedigrees of Shallcross. So he got a lot of his information from there, but he must have had first-hand information from the people who resided at Shallcross back in the beginning of the 20th century. So that was him. His father, Mr. Gunson, he actually was the architect for the Buxton Gasworks and other buildings of repute. Now, those of you who remember the manor, as I do, remember seeing it like this. Very sadly, this beautiful eminence had fallen out of the airline, and it had been passed on and passed on and sold on and sold on, until in the early 60s it was abandoned and nobody lived in it. It got plundered for its bits and bobs inside, its wood, its lead, and it was a pretty dangerous place to be in, according to our parents, who had warned us not to go in it. However, some of us did go in it. I didn't, but it was a beautiful, and it was very close to the Shallcross estate, as you'll see shortly. It burnt down, or got burnt down, in 1967-68, after a developer bought the estate and the land at the side of it, hoping to develop it and build houses on it, I've recently discovered. So there it is, in all of its eminence, and I don't know who it is that's there. In 1923, something happened to the lords of the manor in this area. The Jodrell estates were broken up. As many of you know, the Jodrell estates had all of Furness Vale as well, the Jodrells being from Yeardsley Hall, and they were very, very rich people, right from the days of Edmund Jodrell in the 10th, 12th century, who fought with the king at Agincourt, and he was granted all of these lands. They accumulated more and more lands, and when the Jodrell was all finished and done with, they had to sell it all and broke it all off. And so they sold them off in lots. And you'll see there, lot 56, Shallcross Hall, and you see the manor there. Oh, if you don't mind, I'm just going to get my little pointer out to me, yeah. Little pointer. I think it's on, have you got the map as well in front of you that David handed out to you? You might be able to, it's actually it's quite good, isn't it? 1 second. Little pointer there. I don't know where my little pointer, little red light's gone. Oh, it was really good as well. Oh. So you see the line there, the road that is in a straight line. That is the remainders of the Roman road. We now call it Elna Lane. One of the things that puzzled me for many years is the word Elna. Well, I found out the reason why it's called Elna Lane now. I have. But it's very strange. And you see there Shallcross Hall and the grammar school there. The grammar school was put in there in the 17th century by the people at Shallcross. They wanted to educate the children, of course. And you'll see the famous half circle of trees emanating from the right. They're the half circle of trees. They're a landmark feature. Over to the left there, you'll see the right angle. You see the right angle just above the word lot. Ooh. Is that a fly or is that somebody got a pointer? I thought somebody had a pointer then. I thought I said, well, that pointer. So you see that square, that right angle corner, that is the present site of Shallcross Hall Farm. However, if you look over to where it says 153A, you'll see that there are farm buildings there. This was in 1923 when the estates were broken up and sold off. The farmyard and the buildings were part of Lot 55, Field 153. Field 145, I've just found a name for it, and I call it the Loop Field. There's something very unusual about that field, and I've yet to discover what it is in there. The bigger map on the other side, you can see the scale of the Jodrell estates. There you'll see Toddbrook Reservoir, and where the dividing line is Taxel Edge. That's the edge, because over there is then Cheshire. So, the wonders of modern technology. It's really the internet that's helped me make all of this. There's no two ways about it. And in recent years, I discovered this National Library of Scotland. And what it allows you to do, see the side-by-side there, the side-by-side feature? It allows you, it splits the screen, and on the select a category or select a map, you can change the map years. So it really shows the beginning of Ordnance Survey maps right up to modern times, and how maps change and how things disappear and how things start appearing again, which, you know, so things completely disappear off the map, as they say. On the other side is exactly the same feature, but that's with the LiDAR view, DSM 1 metre. I'll tell you more about the LiDAR. You'll see there Shallcross, the manor, but on the corresponding map, the LiDAR map, you'll see it's not there. And you'll see in the bottom, on the left-hand side, you'll see Shallcross Hall Farm. Suddenly now it's there, exactly where that corner is there. And those three buildings completely disappeared. It's taken me ages to work out what it all means. But this radar view here, it shows you every lump and bump under the ground just below the surface of the land. I love it. I live on LiDAR. Same comparison now on the Ordnance Survey, 1892 to 1914. We've still got a map. It's got a bit more refined, and you see the building, the farm building on the top left there. It's got like protracted windows outside of it, and then rather two big farm buildings there where it says letter P. that stands for pump. And then where my, oh, I've got a pointer. I've got a pointer. Use my mouse. Oh, I'm so happy now. So here is a strange building there. Here's an anomaly, there's some kind of wall there. And here in the loop field, there's an anomaly there, don't know what that is. But on the corresponding, exactly, the actual map, the aerial view, you will see how different it really looks now. It's exactly the same view, side by side. You'll see the road coming up from Taxel here. You'll see this wall here is there. And you'll see the manor, which is here, was once there. The developer who bought this land, Mr. Rogerson, he developed all of this land and he wanted to develop all of this field here at the side of it. He wasn't allowed to put houses on there. For some reason, it got turned down. So he had to make do with this. And he put on three or four bungalows on the terrace land there. And then finally, these bungalows up here. These ones were actually on the side of the manor. So it looks really different, doesn't it? There's so much changed. And this bit here, between this part and this part here, this is what I'm going to show you and talk to you about. Because this has been the mystery. No one until now has ever worked out where the three halls were. Typically in the olden days, if you had a house site, you would do it all up and then you maybe pull it all down and build another one on top, as was the case with Bradshaw Hall in just outside of Chapel. They'd take it all down, build it all up again. But sometimes, as with Hardwick Hall, rest of Hardwicks, they just made a new one. They made a new one, and then when it was ready, they started taking stuff out of the old one and piecing it up. And that's what's exactly happened here with Shallcross Manor. But when did it start? Because the one that's here was the third one. So, we'll see what happens next. Now, nothing wrong with a bit of original cut and paste, you know, getting your scissors and glue out. So this is what I've done here. On this old map, I've cut out those farm buildings and I've pasted them on top of the modern map. So yes, so to give an idea, where are these buildings gone? Where are they? They can't be seen. This is 2020 aerial mapping here. There's the farm and all its development there. So it's really, really strange. Until we get to this. And this is what gave me the light bulb moment. By the Environment Agency Survey Open Data Index Catalogues, this is a LiDAR view map. The colours indicate the elevation of the ground. So the higher up you go, the colour changes, and the lower down below sea level you go, the colours change as well. So you can see that this hillside is sloping. To give you an idea of where we are, Taxel Lay-by on Long Hill. Just come out of the traffic lights, and you're at the lay-by there, and you come round by Shallcross Wood. This is Shallcross Wood. This is the little back track that comes up from here. You come out onto Shallcross, you go down Manor Road, and you come out on Shallcross Estate. And there you'll see Elna Lane. It looks really strange, doesn't it, in this kind of format? But this gave me a light bulb moment, because that field in between the bungalows and the farm, you can now see a little bit different. It doesn't look like grass anymore. I'll make it a bit bigger so you can see clearer. Magic. Here you can see the new development of the farm. It's now holiday lets. It's had a massive redevelopment, but the farmhouse is basically here, and Mr. Lummis's farm buildings were here in some kind of horseshoe shape. Here's the track coming up from Taxel Lay-by, and as it curves round here, you will see there's the loop field, but actually the loop field is that there now. Can you see this line? That's the line of the wall now. However, there's some really strange structure here with the wall. It's like and it's sunken down. And this here, well, you can't see what that is in reality. So that's really piqued my interest. But look here. Look what's under the grass. There's some very strange images that look like this. The terracing that they did to put the bungalows on they levelled the ground so the bungalows could be flat. Well, it's got the same kind of appearance, so I had to go up. I had to go up and find out for myself. So off I toddled last August and to see what I could see. I grew up there, I knew it, but I'd never seen the field from that perspective. This is what I found when I first went up last August. The grass hadn't been cut because what had happened in recent years, the farm has been broken up and sold off in lots again. Various people have bought the lots, and there is no farm animals on it anymore. The grass is cut and maintained by the local farmers, luckily, because that grass is good grazing and hay fodder. Up until then, Andrew Shuker and the Lumisters before him, they had their milking cows on there. Luckily, it didn't take long. I think I went up the next day and Pete Hodgson had been in with his tractor and chopped it all down. But I could start seeing things then. I could start seeing what I knew. Keep your eye on the telegraph pole here and there. Can you see this line here? This is the... have we got... What picture have you got on? I haven't got it. This is that outline of one of those on the LiDAR map. Let me just go back. This here is that wall. So that is some kind of retaining wall. And then the loop field, remember I told you this is the mound that's in that field. It's quite rectangular. It's very steeply cut into there and somebody's planted a tree. I don't know why and I don't know what it's there for. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what's under there. So, I went again. I've been quite a few times over the time. The grass has started to come back again, and I'm stood now in the where the holiday cottages are at Shallcross Hall farm. And they made it look really beautiful. It's a really nice business that they've got going there. And I've stood in their little veg plot thing and taken a photo across the side. I know that here, where it says number 1, can you see up there, number 1? This is where the medieval house was. Number 2, can you see the flat platform there? It's completely flat. That's where the next hall was, number 2. And here, where number 3 is, was where the building we all know and remember was stood there. It would have been round about this height. So, and then stood a bit further up on the track in the field here, looking down. You can see very kindly that the owners cut a little bit of grass there for me just to highlight. I know he didn't, but anyway, I'd like to think he did. So you can see, and here you can see the view of Whaley Bridge down there, and there's the meadow now all growing again, and that's my car. So it looks like nothing, it's just lumps and bumps, and it makes absolutely no sense, but it will do. Why would anybody build a house on the top of a hill half a mile away from the river, any source of water, where anybody knows you can't build a house where there's no water, because water is so important for everything? Why would you build a house up on the top of the hillside? Not once, not twice, but 3 times. So, well, it's very prominent. It's very prominent. Here I've turned the side-by-side map into 3D. You can actually manipulate these maps and turn them into a 3D, which is what I've done here. What's standing out here is the River Goyt. And up until recently, about 100 years ago, this was the dividing line between Derbyshire and Cheshire. 2 districts. So here, when you come down through Taxall, down to the River Goyt, which if anybody's been down Taxall from Taxall Church down to the river, it's almost vertical, isn't it? It's a very steep valley, gouged out by the water, of course. It's very steep on the other side as well. And when you get to the brow of the hill, up to Shallcross, well, you've got a very prominent viewpoint of everything. And you can capture whoever's coming on this track here. Can you see this track? Goes down, up through there, and it goes down to the crossroads where you'll see my little Shallcross. There it is in brown. It used to be wood. These crosses were made of wood when Augustinian priors were sending people out all the way around England, converting the pagans into Christianity. They would erect the cross of Christ and preach at them. They were preaching crosses. Over time, the crosses deteriorated, so they started to put in cross shape. And if you've seen the marketplace at Chapel and Frith, the Saxon market cross there, it's a long, tapered, thin pole, like a tree trunk, with a cross on the cross of it. So yeah, the pink here, well, this is the Roman road, coming up Chapel Road there, up Elna Lane, and off it goes up to Shuker's Farm, and that's Elna Lane carrying on there. Well, why you would build a house here of such eminence and importance, half a mile away from the river, is because of this here. This is Taxel Ridge, or Taxel Edge as we call it, and that cleft in the hill, I don't know if it's a natural formation or whether it's man-made, but this is the ancient trade route, the salt route, that comes via Salters Ford, and it comes from the salt mines of Cheshire. It was such an important trade route because it was going from the product, the salt, and all kinds of trade, through the cleft in the hill, down the moors there, across the meadow at Taxel, and look where it ended up, at the brow of the hill. Convenient place to put your church, isn't it, really? So you could catch people there, go to church there. The church is not of Norman origin, around about the time of the French people coming, the William the Conqueror, but there are still Saxon things remaining in it. And when you get down to the bottom of the river and come up again, well, you were greeted at the door by the lords of the manor. You couldn't get through, you had to be checked over, like the passport office, you have to show your passport, and then off you go to the trade routes. And then, so that's what it was all about. And every time they built another hall, they had complete view of this, and therefore control over it as well. So the other colourings here in the blue, this, resemble or remind us that one of the things that made the Shallcross people so rich, and is what we've known for around here for many hundreds of years, is the presence of coal mines. This coal mine down, this coal colliery here was what we call Pit Bank. It's on Manor Road now, isn't it? And on the other side, at Fernie Lee there, many people will know that this is the Whaley Tip. Do you remember Whaley Tip, everybody? Yeah? So this corner is now shaved off. It's more rounded like this. You come through Taxel Woods. That's where it's all collapsed now, and we can't go through till September. But there's the colliery there, and the colliery there. Under all of Shallcross's land was that very important wealth-making coal, and he exploited this right to the very end. So that's what it all is, and that's why they built them here. There, there, and there. You with me so far? Oh, back. So, the very first hall, the medieval hall. Mr. Gunson, he writes in his little brochure, you can get it free off the internet, you can go to Derbyshire Archaeological Journal, and you can see all of my workings and trying desperately to work out what on earth he's actually saying. It took me so long to work out that there were 3 buildings, not one, not 2, but 3 separate buildings, not all built on each other, which is quite unusual. So it was built around the 1200s. We'll round it off to the 1200s. So late medieval kind of period. And what to Ernest Gunson says, in his convoluted way, he describes it, and I don't know how he describes it because I don't know how he knows. It was a low, half-timbered building. It was high vaulted with a slate roof. Where they would have got slate from round here, I don't know. But slate is, subjective, isn't it? Could have been stone slates, couldn't it? Or other kind of slates, brick slates. And it was similar to others of its kind in Cheshire. Well, I've looked for hours and hours for Cheshire ones. Couldn't find any Cheshire ones that was low of that. And he said that also there was a wing of this building that had a chapel on it. Well, in those days, people became very, very religious, didn't they? And these big houses, they all had the little chapel, like at Irwood Hall, as we know. Irwood Hall has its own chapel. It's even going 3, 4, 5 miles to the church over the valley or miles away. But he says the chapel was where later the Georgian barn was built. And I just couldn't work out what this meant. And of course, there's a spring there, and that's one of the reasons why they built there. A natural spring coming up out of the ground, providing all the water needs for the animals, for the land, for the vegetables, for the people, for washing, for cleaning, for everything. A spring, of course there is. And it had a gatehouse leading to the front door. Well, I thought, well, I think I know where that gatehouse is now. Yes. It was the home of Sven, the Shallcross, number 1, first one. He was a forester of the High Peak to Lenton Priory, where you had to give everything that you earned and owed to the priors, didn't you? You paid in your tithes, your wool, your produce and everything. It all went to the priories to pay for them. And you were just serfs. However, they appointed lords, landlords of the manor, and this is what Sven was. Anthony Shallcross, who was the 12th, discovered coal beneath the ground, which increased the wealth and the status of the family. Because something happened in history, and it was called like Henry VIII. Anthony was the last occupant of this hall, and he died in 1548. So from about 1100, 1150 to about 1548, it's about 300 years. Can you imagine what that house would have looked like after a low building like that? They didn't have the tools and the equipment that we have now to this day. And of course, there's so many generations there. There's 11 generations. They all had loads of children. How could they all fit in something so small? Well, it grew. And like we do nowadays, we put a new wing on our house, don't we? Put an attic extension. We put a garage in, we convert it. We put another back to extend the kitchen. Well, it's nothing new. We're not doing anything new to what our forefathers did. So, son Leonard, he builds the next hall, because this medieval hall isn't cutting it anymore. It's outgrown its purpose. The technology is old. It would have been dropping to bits, patching it all up. It wasn't fit for purpose anymore, and certainly not for a lord of the manor. Apparently, in one of the documents here, when I've been transcribing all of the information, the footnote says that this hall was supposedly haunted. And I remember, I don't know if anybody else remembers, I mean, even in my childhood in the 1960s, we had a certain thing that were passed around the generations where Shallcross Hall was haunted, that there was a cavalier there, and that things were found. So these things have been passed down through the local generations in the village. I think it would have looked something like this. And I think it evolved like this. Unfortunately, they've used pretty much the same kind of colours. This is just a black and white image. But you see the original shading here, the original coloration, forget those dates there, it's just to show you how it grew. The original building was the Great Hall, and over time they needed to put on pantries, the kitchen, the buttery where they'd make all the butter, they'd convert all of the vegetables and sell it and trade it or feed the family, the solar, I don't know where the solar is, the dais, the screens in the passage. Anybody's been to Haddon Hall, you know, the Great Hall there, that's where, through the main door, that's where all the big business is done and the entertaining and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's similar to this. And over here, the site of the chapel, which is growing on. See, just put another room on there, just keep adding it on. Now, I've chosen this building because of this angle here, because this reminded me of that on the LiDAR image. It reminded me of that strange anomaly on the LiDAR image of the half a wall, bit of a wall, half a wall, the track down to Taxel, through the hall passageway, the site on one of the the chapel on one of the farm buildings, and here, Gunson says the road was approached directly through the gatehouse into the hall. However, as it evolved, it took a sharp left turn round the building and sharp right down to Taxel Valley. So I think that over time, after 350 years, that one building from the 1200s grew substantially, with 11 heirs in there. There were hundreds of children by that time. You know, they bred prolifically, didn't they? 1 or 2, 3 wives, you know. There were a lot of people, and as their status grew, they needed a bigger and better house. We all do that. No, we upgrade. Yeah. So this is how I think. And of course, they didn't dig footings. They didn't dig. It was soil earth most of the time, compacted. So it wasn't really des res. So something happened. Now the hall there was it like a Saxon, an Anglo-Saxon stronghold? Because the Anglo-Saxons, after the Romans left, they were establishing building a stronghold, guarding the trade routes. Of course they were. Or later an Anglo-Danish homestead. What Mr. Gunson mentions is that it was the Vale of Shallcross. If you've got a lord of the manor, you don't operate by yourself, do you? You have servants, you have farm workers. They didn't live in your manor with you. They lived on the outskirts in their own little village, in little shacks, basically, and they're the farm workers. So where did they go? Where's all of their homesteads gone? Sven and Shallcross are Anglo-Danish words. So we know that Sven was of that kind of origin. This building here, when I saw this, I thought, that is how I think the gatehouse might have looked. This is Stokesay Castle in Shropshire, which was built at the end of the 13th century. Gunson suggests that the gatehouse was across the road of approach from the old coach road, which is Elna Lane, i.e. the Roman road. Typical of his time, a low stone wall with plenty of wood above. And the reason for this was stone wasn't plentiful, and it was expensive as well, whereas wood was very plentiful, the oak beams. However, these buildings didn't last very long because they continually caught on fire, especially if you had a thatched roof and fires were in the middle, and they always caught fire. Well, what happened is at Bradshaw Hall, when Mr. Gunson wrote about Bradshaw Hall, which I've just discovered, he explains why. He explains why Bradshaw Hall was taken from a place like this and built a new one on top, completely made of stone. And it's because they were allowed to. And round here, there's plenty of grit stone. So that's what's happened. So going through, Mr. Gunson said the approach was straight through the gatehouse and then into the front door of the hall. And I think it might have looked something like this, maybe not two decks. So, but on the other side of this hall, you see there the approach. It's just very pretty, isn't it? I'd love to think that was still there. After 400 years, it's time for a change. The prosperity and the status increases because of the discovery of coal beneath the ground. They sunk coal mines all over the village, all over their estate. And the Shallcross coal mines, collieries, were some of the oldest coal mines in the whole of Derbyshire. So they were, plus they were bailiffs. They were bailiffs of the county as well. So they were very eminent people, and they married very well, which is what money people do. They marry within the other local gentry. And in this case, the nearest local gentry were the Jodrells of Yeardsley Hall, Jodrell fame. The Shallcrosses and the Shallcrosses and the Jodrells have intermarried, they've married cousins, they've all swapped over places, and they're inextricably linked with each other. Even to this day, there's going to be some Shallcrosses and Jodrells roaming around in Whaley Bridge. The Elizabethan Hall was built around 1595, just at the beginning of the 17th century. And this, according to Gunson, is what it looked like, because he mentions this hall, which is Snitterton, in Matlock. I had to go over to Snitterton in Matlock to see for myself what Mr. Gunson was saying, because there's not a great deal on the internet, so I thought it's not far away, Matlock. He'd obviously written about it as well, and he said it's so typical of the time, late Elizabethan, Jacobean time, 1595, that kind of time. E for Elizabeth, with the middle arm taken out. That's exactly what it is. And this was built at a right angle to the medieval home. And it may be about 100 yards away, less, on that platform that they levelled out to build this beautiful eminence on top there. It was in full view of Whaley Bridge, and it would have looked into my kitchen window had it still been there. Yes, I can deal with that. And Gunson says that between this house and the old house, well, spring were, so they had their source of water still. And he also said that the stables and the farm buildings for this are now on the site of the hall's first, Hall 1's chapel. So Gunson actually says that the medieval chapel is where the farm buildings, which I showed you on your little map there, you see the map with the little farm buildings in a circle, a bit of a circle? So we know that these were built around the same time as the farm buildings, because they had stables. Of course they had stables, because it was horsepower, wasn't it? Horses for riding, horses for ploughing. It was a proper village in its own right. A few key points in history. Henry VIII, he dissolved the monasteries in between 1536-ish and 1541. That was the end of the reign for the priories. They'd had their day. But now it was the king who took over, because Henry didn't want to belong to this Catholic Church anymore, did he? Because he wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon and marry Anne Boleyn, with whom he had his daughter Elizabeth I. So things changed drastically in the country. Monasteries were being pulled down. What did the people have to do? His daughter Elizabeth eventually inherited the throne, and she died in 1603. And that was the end of the Reformation. Leonard Shallcross, who was the 13th Lord, he built this house, Leonard. He's quite prolific. There's a lot in Gunson's book about Leonard Shallcross. And he died in 1605. So he didn't actually live in the house for very long. He had 2 wives, 11 by one, 3 by the other. So he was quite prolific. Of course, that's what you do. You spread your genes. If you've got the money, you can spread your genes all over, and everybody kind of mixes with other houses of importance and eminence. It's how money people kept their wealth together, wasn't it? I'm not saying it's happening today, but you never know. You never know. So he was the one in 1605. He died in 1605 in this beautiful building. His heir and great-grandson, which was Richard, the third Richard, because unfortunately, as with a lot of families, my own family included, they pick a handful of names and they repeat them ad nauseum throughout the family history. So if you've got like 5 names, you just jumble them all around and say, well, our John's named after my great-great-granddad, and my great-grandson, my grandson's going to be called John as well. Well, they're no different. Out of the 17 heirs, 7 of them were called John. 3 of them were called Richard. One was called Leonard and Edmund. But that's why I've had to put, number 3 you have to put in brackets, and then their position in the line of 17. So Richard, he was only 45 when he died. He was the last one to inhabit this building. He had 3 wives and 10 children. Well, that's what you do, isn't it, when you can afford to family. And according to Gunson and other writers, this hall was very, very lavish. Now, the owner of Snitterton, he was very, very kind. I went and knocked on his door last year, and I said, excuse me, I know this is going to be really strange, but I'm doing some study on Shallcross Manor, and the man who's written this, and I was thrusting it in his hand, he said it's exactly like your house. I'm just wondering if I could just have a little look around. I thought he was the gardener or the kitchen porter. Actually, he was the millionaire owner. It just happened not to be. I didn't knock on the front door. I knocked on the side door, and he was very, very kindly took me all the way. He didn't take me in the house. I'd have loved it. He took me all the way around the garden and let me rabbit on for about an hour and a half, letting me take as many photos as I want. And he was describing things. He passing on his information. So that was very, very kind of him. But that is my photo there. It's absolutely stunning. And what a shame that that no longer exists in Whaley Bridge. We tend to think of our time in Whaley Bridge as being from the Industrial Revolution, don't we? From the canals and the cotton mines and the coal. But no, there was something big in this area way before that. At the same time, the hall apparently was very, very lavish. It had silk tapestries adorning the walls. You had to be pretty rich to afford silk tapestries. And there were many corridors and rooms with oak panelling throughout. Well, your oak panelling and all your fitments, you didn't just leave it behind when you left your old house. You took them with you. We call it recycling nowadays, don't we? But they doing it long before, because everything had a value. So you started building your new house, and then when that was ready, you started taking stuff out of the old house and put it in, which is what happened. At the same time, this period of time, Taxel Church was having its first major rebuild. It had all fallen to rack and ruin from being the Norman times. It was very, very basic and crude. So as what rich people did, again, buying favours in heaven, they put their money into the church and spruced it all up and made it all proper. A lot of the gentry is they couldn't go into the air system, because only one air, basically, but they were very rich and affluent and influential. So what better way to keep that influence going than joining the church as a rector or a vicar or somebody high up? And that was a way of keeping everything together as well. Richard, here, Richard 3:16, he's actually buried in the chancel near his ancestor, Roger Georgian. You all know that the surname Georgian, one of the descendants of Georgian is one who from Georgian Bank. So the name Georgian comes from here. And to prove it, here it is. This is my feet in the bottom there in Taxel Church. To show you the size of this in the chancel. Look, only that's kept nicely polished. But William Georgian, the archer, he died in 1379 and he was knight to the Black Prince. Well, of course, the Black Prince, if you've been to Lyme Park, when you go into the Great Hall through the main doorway, portrait of the Black Prince up there. He was really, really influential. And if you supported, gave your money towards the prince and helped fight to keep the standard, you were rewarded by the king and the ruling forces with lands. You were given these titles. So, Roger Georgian, somewhere down here, he fought at the Battle of Agincourt, and he's buried here in 1423. It took him about 4 years to get his body back from the battlefield. I don't know what happened in the intervening times, but anyway, so he was buried here in 1423. I counted these up. There's 17 family members buried under the floor of Taxel Church in the crypts or whatever there. And most of them are related to the Shallcrosses, which is how I've had to decipher the owners of Shallcross from this book here, which is for sale on here. I'm beginning to condense down all of these documents, all of these people. It's taken me absolutely ages to work out who belongs to who and what. And it's worthy of another talk, actually, so I might do another talk on the Shallcross people. But for now, this talk is about the people who mattered regarding to the houses. So, let's talk about Snitterton again. The two pictures at the top here. This is our Shallcross, taken from a different angle this time, from down in the field there. And what you'll see down this side is this. Now this is the actual building. This is what the actual building was, built in 1713. These wings here were built on another time. They were extensions to accommodate more people in there. And this building here, and these buildings here, and those there, have come from the Elizabethan manor. Because as I said, all that building material, they just reassembled it here. Because look at Snitterton. When I saw this, I thought, oh my word, that looks familiar. Here's the hall, look. And at the side is the wing where the kitchens and everything was, the back rooms, which is why I thought he was the gardener, you see. I just thought he was the gardener or whatever, or just renting it, I don't know. And you see the walls that surround the building and the gateway. So, and just to show you some of the photos that I took loads. I took absolutely loads. But you see the architecture design there. That was a massive door. It looks small. It's not. It's really, really big. And that is the original door there as well. So, when I went up there last year, it had been raining. The grass was really tall. I knew what I was looking for because I'd seen the LiDAR map, so I knew where the lumps and bumps were. Unfortunately, I was met with all that tall grass, so I had to mooch around, climb over the wall into the loop field. Do you remember I told you about the loop field? And look on the other side of the wall. Because when they started building walls and enclosing fields for tithing, each lot has got a tithe attached to it, and whatever tithe volume was in that acreage was whatever you owed to the Lord. You had to give a certain percentage to the king. The king's, was it called the king's lot? I don't know. But this is what I found on the inside of the wall into the field, not the one side facing the wall, the road. Look at this here. I thought, well, that's definitely not just happened by chance. It's curved. Look at my finger there, so for size. And there's something there, but it's quite heavily eroded. When I went to Snitterton, look what I saw. It's almost exactly the same in design. This is outside the front of the front house with the decorative park to welcome people in. But it's there, isn't it? And I thought, I'm onto something here now. I'm really onto something. I'm finding things. Oh, have I skipped something? No? Now, Shallcross Hall Farm, as I said, is in its new place. I'll call it New Shallcross Hall Farm. When the farm got sold off recently, it was Shookers who took it over from the Lummus farmers. And then over that time, one of the Shookers family started developing the farm into an accommodation for themselves and renting properties that they developed as holiday lets or actual properties. I think actually the you live in one of them, don't you?
Not that one.
Not one. No. So I happen to know who the family were who had this, and I wrote to the daughter who I was at school with, and I asked if she still had any of the documents from the farm by chance, and she said she hadn't. But she told me, I found out that there was some things in her mum's garden that were from Shallcross. They were thinking it was from the manor. However, I'm thinking it's different. I'm thinking it's from the old farm. Things got left around in the area, and so they got cleaned up. And what you see here is the pediment of a front door. And there, unfortunately, you can only see half of the date. It says there's a 1 there and a 6 there. Can you see that leg? And it was, so some building was built in 1600s. And you see it sloped up to a point there. I don't know if there would have been anything in that little recess there. I don't know. It's huge. It's about this tall. So it must have got on quite a big building. I think I know where it came from. I think it came from the Georgian barn, which was built on the site of the medieval chapel place. It's all completely gone now. There's not a shred of evidence of that barn existing now. These are some stone balls that go on top of gate posts. So there's quite a few things there. Again, looking closer at walls. This one here, if anybody's knows the architecture, and an arch. You know, in an arch, there's one stone that pins it all together and gives it that solid structure and stability. That, to me, is the top of an archway. Now, the Georgian stables were very, very ornate. And Gunson says that the building actually resembled Mellor Hall over in Mellor, that way, near Marple. I didn't quite go to Mellor Hall, but I did find some pictures of it on the internet. Gunson said it was far too ornate to be for what it was, a stables. It was very elaborate, lots of solid oak in there, arches, and it was really, really big. It had 4 lighted windows on 2 floors where the stable people would have, the stable hands would have lived. So who knows? It could be from there. It could be from the Elizabethan manor. This stone here, well, it doesn't look like these ones, does it? It looks like it's a man-made stone. I really don't know. And this one, number 3. Can you see this kind of big stone here? And there's another one of the same kind of size here. Well, this wall, which is on the inside of the loop field, is about 20 foot long. It starts there and it ends there. And it's just one stone, maybe 2 down there. And then they just built a dry stone wall on top of it. And this is what I think is the base for the medieval gatehouse at the top of the loop field. And this is something else which, this piqued my interest. And maybe, what if? So it's all this. There's the side of the hall. I've used my zoom on my camera to look at the modern farm now, which was built out of those other buildings. And you see, look at the odd side, look at that stone. What on earth is that doing in there? These are just all the normal stones. So they've used all the materials from the Georgian farm buildings. And Gunson says that where the medieval house was, in his day, was a very unattractive wing of a farm, like a shippen or something like that. So they just kept on using the stone. Gunson also says that the very elaborate Georgian stables, the wall was topped with these half-moon coping stones. There's all different kinds of sizes of stones there. And here, well, I love this. And I've actually, not this one, I've not taken this one home, but I've taken one of these bricks home. These are medieval bricks. And recently I found out how you know. It's because they were 2.5 inches deep. So littered throughout this wall, going right where the medieval hall was, where Lummisers built up the wall again. I remember the wall not being there. I remember Lummisers building it up. So littered around that area, there's bits and remnants of the old buildings from there. So it's all still there, just distributed elsewhere. So, and I think the farm was built around about 1925, 1930, because it's not on the Jodrell, the map of the Jodrell Trust Estates catalogue. Is this available? Yes, it is. This is available as well. I think, did you say they were £2 each or three for a fiver? I think that's what. Or did you change your mind? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, they're available here if anybody really wants to go looking at what I'm talking about. Now here we have, and I was so thrilled about this because I thought, well, photography was in those days. Did anybody take any photos? And I've been desperately looking for photos, and I actually found one quite recently. This is a narrowed down, a cropped image of a photo that was placed on one of the local photo pages of Wharf Road Colliery. If anybody knows Wharf Road in Whaley Bridge, the river comes through the park and it snakes round, it goes under the bridge, and the colliery was there where now is old folks' bungalows. There's some old bungalows there. And this here, the coal house, was where Weir Cottage is now, and where my mum actually was raised and grew up there in Weir Cottage. So I zoomed in on the top of the skyline and look what I saw. There you will see the hall standing proud with no trees blocking its view. There's the half moon of trees which go out from it and curl round. There's some more trees, which some of them have gone now, but look, there you can see the Georgian stables and the barn for the first time. Well, I was I was so excited about this. I couldn't zoom in anymore, all the picture got all blurred, but at least it's there, isn't it? So we know that that's the Georgian one, which overlooked, right lined up, spot on with Taxel Church across the valley, bang straight on there. And there's that one stuck out, going that way. It's not flat on, it goes out. And that in between was the farmyard, which have you look on your little map there. I haven't got that actually, I do need that map now. Have you got that little map page there? If you see the map, oh, the farm buildings aren't on there. Oh, it's a later one, sorry. I'll go back and show you later on in any case. But the three buildings are there, and now they're completely gone. And now we come to the third hall, Shallcross 3, as I call it. Because it's hard to remember saying medieval, Elizabethan and Georgian. It's number 3. This was built in 1723. and it lasted until 1967. So in the greater picture of things, it didn't really last that long, not compared to the medieval one. And this thing has always bugged me. We all say hall or manor. We all say Shallcross or Shawcross, as somebody's asked me. It doesn't really matter. Shawcross, Shallcross, there were 36 different pronunciations and names coming out of the word name Shallcross. To this day, Shawcross, Shaw, Shallcross, different spellings, different pronunciations, but it's Shallcross. So why do we say hall and why do we say manor? There's a reason. A medieval manor house, in architectural terms, is a late medieval country house. The roots are in the Saxon halls, which I showed you at the beginning. It's just a simple rectangular building. Do you remember hall, the first one I showed you, the low building? That acted as a communal gathering place for eating, sleeping and transacting business. And as time passed, of course, as the families grew and as demands grew and everything grew, houses grew, you stuck your extensions on, more rooms were added to the whole structure until it became a substantial dwelling suitable for a lord of the manor, the estate basically. So basically a manor is a rural mansion surrounded by acres of land, exactly what Shallcross is. The hall, well, is just a variation on the historic manor. All halls, these were buildings like the Old Hall Hotel in Buxton. It was called the Hall when it was new, and it was called the New Hall in Buxton. One of the oldest, it is actually the oldest hotel in the country, Old Hall Hotel. The Old Hall in Whiteoff in Chinley, lots of places are just called the Hall, aren't they? Because compared to what we plebs were living in, the Hall, everybody knew it was the Lord of the Manor. The Lord of the Manor, yes. In Old English, Hal, I don't know how it's pronounced, I don't do Old English. The hall was the main entrance or the gateway, and in time it came to refer to any important room in a medieval or early modern manor house. The Great Hall, usually located at the heart of the manor, used for various purposes, and it's where the lord of the manor would hold court and hear grievances. Well, that's what the Shallcross people were. They were bailiffs, they were county bailiffs, and as time went on, they became colonels in the forces. They were colonels to the higher up people, the king and all these kind of people. They had this massive status. So the lord of the manor would have the grievances. Plus, he was obliged to the crown to pay these taxes, to earn the money and pay his tithes towards the crown. There were visitations that occurred various times, and it's where the taxman came, for want of a better word. The taxman would come to these places and say, right, what have you got, what have you got? You've given all this, you've got all of this, this is your portion, the tax, please. One of the Shallcrosses, he was very high up, he was a bailiff for the county and a sheriff as well. They just made sure that everyone was giving the right taxes. He evaded one of his taxes, and I think he got a little bit done for it. These are just normal human people. If you can get away with it, you're going to try and get away with it, aren't you? We all do it. And here we have now Shallcross 3, the Georgian manor. And this picture, as I said, it's from the same time. We haven't got any modern pictures because it just isn't there anymore. What Mr. Gunson says in his little book there, which I've deciphered, this was built by the last male heir, John Shallcross. He was the 7th John, I think, and he was the 17th heir from Sven Shallcross, number 1. So there's 17 heirs from around 1200 up to about 1700. That's a lot of people over a 500-600 year period. He built this, and then 10 years later he died. I don't know. He was 71. He had a good life, though. He was very eminent. He had a lot of influence and power. Prosperity from his coal mines and the 2 collieries. And he built this beautiful Georgian manor. And there's plenty written about this by Gunson and other people describing it. They took the panels and the fitments from Hall 2, from number 2. Of course they did, because these were beautiful ornate oak panels, and luckily, because we've got photos of the inside, we can actually see what the inside of Stitterton would look like, basically. People wrote that the Hall 2 was very, very beautiful. It was huge, it had lots of corridors and lots of oak panelling. This was wealth at the top of the scale. Not wallpaper, not plaster, oak panelling. It was just east of North 2, as I said, on that platform that they levelled out of the ground. And this was just east of the Hall 2, and it was put at the side, again, facing again my kitchen window right across the valley. John, number 7, this male, John here, he's buried at Taxel. He was the High Sheriff for the county. If you were the High Sheriff of Derbyshire, you were pretty high up in society. He sold the manor in 1733, the year of his death. He probably knew he was nearing his end. And he had 8 children. Unfortunately, those 8 children, 3 of them, the boys, and the rest were girls, some died in infancy, but he had no male heirs. He had, however, 3 daughters, co-heiresses. But as things go in these things, the women just did not carry the title. That was it, finito. What a shame. Now, in 1950, and some people will remember these people, Mr. and Mrs. Berry moved into Shallcross Manor. And they bought this manor. They were quite wealthy people. And this is the advertising photos, or was it when they were selling the manor in 1954. So luckily, Historic England still have this catalogue of the photos on their website, I discovered recently. And I've seen some photos on there which I've never seen before, and which I guarantee nobody here has ever seen as well. So you see here the 4 cubed kind of extra wings that they built on, because that's the original building. This is like some little half-moon passages that joined the 2 buildings together. At Snitterton, there are 4 of these, 2 at the front and were 2 at the back. So it's still on the theme of Snitterton. This wall is still here. It's all overgrown now. The owner of the field might actually know. He might have seen this wall already. This is the owner of the field now. I recently made myself known to him to explain what I was doing there and asking his permission to walk around on his field. So this wall is still here, and this is the ancient track that came up from the collieries down at Pitbank, or from the traffic lights, that area, and it came up here. The gateway is still in the wall there. The track went across there. This is where the top bungalow is, and it went out round the corner through a gap in the wall, which is still there. The gatepost is still there. It's all bricked up, and that's the beginning of the semicircle of trees round there. It's all still there. Fascinating. This is the back view of it, and again, I've never seen this. That's window tax, isn't it? That's window tax for you. But when the Berries lived there, they did a lot of alterations to it. They brought it up to modern standards. They put heating in, and they must have put this hothouse greenhouse in there, because I've never seen this. This little wall here is what Malcolm's actually discovered, haven't you? That was to stop animals getting into, it was a low curtilage. No! Oh, is that you? But Mark Gunnison says that it had a ha-ha, a curtilage wall. Well, you see how high this curtilage wall is here? This offered protection from elements, from the drafts, from people breaking in. So it's here as well, this curtilage wall. Beautiful, isn't it? And that was really, really modern. And I've put there Mrs. Berry's dog Brutus, because if you look down here, you'll see Brutus. Brutus, who was a what dog? No, he was one of those ones that carry brandy around the neck.
St. Bernard.
A St. Bernard. Mrs. Berry writes on one of the local forums. She actually wrote something, and she's written quite prolifically about her experience when she owned Shallcross Manor. That this dog Brutus, he taught her daughter how to walk when he was little. He was a huge dog, and he was beautiful. And she named her daughter Letitia. Very strange name to name a child. Whatever she'd done, though, she'd looked into the family history. She'd been over to Taxel Church, and she'd seen that the last family members of the last descendants, there were 2 daughters named Letitia. So in honour of the Shallcross people, she named her daughter Letitia. And you see the fruit trees here. And this now, if anybody knows, well, obviously Malcolm knows it, this here is where the top bungalow is. You can still walk up to the wall there and stare in the bungalow's windows if you want to, you know. You can't help it, it looks really nice. And this is still the garden. I believe under here, and if anybody can correct me, please say, I never went in the building. I was too scared. First the ghost, or second they were falling down. But I believe the cellars were supposed to be extensive. So I believe under here would have been extensive cellars. Were they filled in? Probably. From when all this all burnt down in 1967 and Mr. Rogerson levelled it all, I think he would have filled in the cellars with all of the remaining stones, what was left. Now, here we go. I've never seen this photo until last week. This is one of the bedrooms. It's probably the master bedroom where Mr. and Mrs. Berry would have slept. And it's in typical kind of 50s elegance, isn't it? Like the ruched curtains there, the big drapes, a mirrored headboard. Mirrored headboard. This is elegance here. A big chaise lounge. solid oak floorboards, and this is the only thing that gives it away really as being modern. There's an old radio there, look. It's an electric one, so they put it through the doorway there. Ventilation, and then some cupboards in there. It's quite simply elegant, isn't it? And then the big bedspread that goes over all your blankets and your duvet and everything. Yeah, because it wasn't very attractive. So, the next one inside the house is this. The interior of Shallcross 3 is very clearly explained in, it's in Mr. Gunson's book, and there's actually a map and the layout of the ground floor in there. When you went through the front door, in ancient style, you entered into a hall area, and it went from the front to the back of the house in traditional style. And off this passageway from front to back were rooms which were all broken up to allow lots of light in with arches. And here you'll see what I mean about that stone in the wall that holds an arch together. Whether that stone was from the very posh, elegant Georgian farm, I really don't know. But it didn't look too dissimilar to this. Let's have a little look around there. They've got tiles on the floor there, a nice fireplace there. That could have come from the Elizabethan Hall. And here, I noticed this because I noticed these kind of things. It's nice having a look around somebody's house, isn't it? This map here, they had, it's obviously a print. It's the John Speed map of 1610. And these were the first kind of maps that allowed horses and coaches who were delivering people from area to area, and you'll find loads of them. And this is the Manchester to Derby map. And it starts off in Manchester, and mile by mile, it shows the coach driver where he should be seeing things, into Stockport, into High Lane, up along Disley Tops, dropping down into Whaley Bridge, and across and over. So for some reason, the Berries had one of the strip maps as well. Don't know if that was left behind. It looks really, really old, that, doesn't it? And there's some bit of modern luxury there, and a mirror. Plenty of light, isn't there? And here's what I mean about the panels coming from the Elizabethan Hall. If you had stuff like this, you're not going to burn it, are you, just because you're building a new house? It's saved on wallpaper, it's saved on plaster. You just stuck these beautiful instant walls on, and your door frames, your door jambs and everything. So I have no doubt that all of these came from the Snitterton Hall 2 one that looked like Snitterton. So that's interesting as well. And you see it's quite an average looking fireplace there, surrounded with a beautiful oak fireplace mantle there. Those bricks, well, they don't look medieval because they're pretty deep. So they could have been from the local foundry down on Shallcross Mill Road, who knows, because that's where the brickworks used to be, very soon now. The next one is across the corridor, and you see there where they put in the heating. Mrs. Berry says that she put in all the heating throughout. Can you imagine putting heating in a big building like that? It must have cost a fortune. Must have cost a fortune. But look at the size of the wooden floorboards in there. Again, no doubt that it came from hall number 2. Top to bottom, wall to wall, oak panels from hall. I've got absolutely no doubt. Whether that was there or whether inherited, but look at this beautiful ornate handle. So this is the room, coming into the room. This reminds me of the stag room at Lyme Park. There's a stag room there, which is a cosy little room. Would be lovely and warm, wouldn't it, in those times, up on the top there, on the top of Shallcross, perishingly cold. So this was a snug little room. Now we're going to have a look at some of the last inhabitants of Hall 3. Where do you think I've got these photos from? Well, I didn't say I was going to show you the faces. I'll just show you who they were. And in Taxel Church, in the bell tower, there are a series of grave slabs that have been propped up all the way around that bell tower, taken up from the floor of the church when it was redesigned in Victorian times. Because once again, the rich, eminent people and the cotton jodrell at Taxel Lodge, they pumped their money in and did up their church. By that time, the churches were all dropping to pieces. They were leaking, they were rotten, they were freezing, they were box pews. So they pumped more money in, gaining more favour with God, and then doing. So what they did with all of these grave slabs, because if you were buried inside the church, you were top notch. Poor people just had to go close to the wall on the outside, and further away you got, the poorer you were. If you had money, you could go in the house of God. So all of these grave slabs that were in there from the hall to the John who put in did the first renovation, they just lifted them up. And Mr. Gunson said there's tons more people in there still under the ground, but they don't know who they are. And they propped them up in the bell tower, which is where they are still to this day. And you can see Roger Jackson here. He was one of the, after the last heir died, the heiresses married into a rich and wealthy family. And one of the heiresses married Roger Jackson from Ashbourne. Died November, so the spellings all over the place because there was no standardised spellings. And you see there one of the Letitias. Letitia, bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Letitia Shallcross, sister to John the Younger. Well, now you know the 7 Johns. Only that kind of gives the date away. And Elizabeth, sister to John and Letitia. So they're all buried there right from the 12th century. If not, Sven himself is buried under there, but they don't know. Because when they did the church up and enlarged it in Victorian times, they just put the wooden floor in and stuck it on top of all of those graves. Yeah. However, there is the door. Here's some more people. Richard Shallcross of Shallcross, son of Richard. So these are really important people. Anne, daughter, Anne was one of the heiresses, the co-heiresses. Daughter to, I don't know. I had to quickly take some photos in there. Somebody kindly let me in and have a look. So that's it. And this is where I'm up to. This is as far as I've got. I've been very busy transcribing all of these people's names into some kind of format that you can understand without making your eyes go crossed all over the place. And I've actually produced a document which has put them all in their name, their position, and things about them that Gunson says. So I've already started doing that. It might be another talk, talking about these people, because it really is interesting, the influence that they had round here. And I also want to develop a theory of why the hamlet was built there. I've already started working this out because of the trade routes, the salt route, the crossroads, the Roman roads. I've no doubt that Shallcross, some settlement existed at Shallcross when the Romans were going past there. No doubt whatsoever. The next inquiry is how to take this a step further. I really don't know. I've only stumbled across this accidentally last year, so I don't really know. However, I do know some people who might know how to find it. And over to my right here are 2 archaeologists, Ian and Catherine Parker Heath. And one day I took a piece of pottery that I found on the track going down to Taxel. I took a piece of pottery to a site they were working on in Longner. And I showed them this piece of pottery, said, what do you think about that? And I think Ian said late medieval. And I thought, yes, I'm on the road. I just happened to find it in the track that hadn't been tarmacked over. It just happened to be in there for decades, or hundreds of years. So I think Catherine was one who said there is funding available, grants available to have sites surveyed properly with GPRS and maybe a little trench done, like a time team kind of thing. Maybe time team themselves, I don't know. My ultimate aim is to have these 3, or the first 2, acknowledged and put on the map as an historical record. And the historical record in Derbyshire is the HER, the Historic Environment Record. I would love to see these 3 houses put on the Historic Environment Record. Yes, so we know it's there. I've tried to find more Gunson papers because he did write a lot. I wanted to find out where his notes are because he's only written what he's actually condensed from what he found. And I wrote to Gunson Architects in Manchester, and it took them a few weeks to reply back and said, right, we haven't got anything, but we're still in touch with Gunson's great-grandson. And he said, I forwarded your letter on to, and he's going to write to you. So Mr. Great-grandson of Gunson wrote me an email back saying, unfortunately, when his great-grandfather died in 1940, his wife and daughter were so distraught they burnt everything. Wow. Well, I know. Well, that's what are you going to do with all these stacks of these papers? Because Gunson, he wrote about lots of other counties' old halls as well. They had no idea of the intrinsic value of their notes. So it's probably all, well, they did suggest that that I wrote to John Ryland, which I did, the John Ryland Library in Manchester and Central Library in Manchester, because they were Manchester architects. However, they said, try to Derbyshire, the Derbyshire Archives at Matlock. I wrote to those, and they said, yeah, we found some stuff on Shallcross. You're welcome to come over and pay us a couple of quid, and you can look at the archives. I've yet to do that, but I don't think I'm going to find anything. I think I've found everything that I possibly can do, which describes the first two halls. Maintain relationship with all fields owners. Now the land, Lumber's Farm, has all got broken up now into lots, and various people have bought them. So to me it's all the same arena, however there's now different owners of those lands there. And Malcolm was the one who I found out, I pinned a note on his gate. I tried to find him, I asked other people if they knew him, the local farmer, Rob Slack up at Overton Farm, and he said he kind of remembered his name. So I went up there and I knocked on the door there and said, do you know who the owner is? He said, oh, I think he's called Malcolm. He said, oh. So I took matters into my own hand and I stuck a note on his gate in a plastic bag. The next morning I got a phone call about this field, and I thought I was in trouble. And he responded that quickly. So very shortly afterwards I paid a visit with his permission, and I took him on a tour. Took him on a tour of his own field. And I think after about an hour, your mind was blown a bit, wasn't it, Malcolm? Because Malcolm's just bought this, from the sale of the lots, he's bought this field. It's quite substantial. I don't know how many acres it is. It's about 6 acres? About 10 acres. And what his ambition is to make an arboretum, a field of trees, of all different kinds of trees. And I think, oh no, well, you know, let's try and get to but when I told him what was where, he said he didn't have any plans for any trees there in any case, so we're pretty safe. He's planted some flowers, haven't you? Planted some nice flowers.
I was going to say, once it's on the HER, then it'll be flagged up and then we'll be able to plant trees.
He's not planting there in any case. But other people now own the other fields, the Loop field, and the water supply between the two houses, between the two, 1 and 2, the water supply is there. Unfortunately, it's not on Malcolm's side. He's had to dig a pond up the top of the field and catch rainwater to water his little saplings. However, I did him a favour. I showed him where the source of water is now coming up, which is where the Georgian farm, the Georgian barn was, and the medieval chapel. That water is still coming up out of the ground there, and I do seem to remember that it was channeled under there, and it's a constant source of water. That's ancient water flow, really, basically still there. I advised him to get in touch with the fields owners, and hopefully now we can get some supply of water back up there. So it's important to maintain good relationships with the people who you're hoping to do some work on their land. It's vitally important. It's crucial, in fact. And again, aim for an archaeological dig. That would be my dream, just to uncover those walls of the medieval farm building and see what the layout, and gauge how big that medieval house eventually got to. And then really just find out how Gunson knew about the medieval hall. Who told him this? Who described this to him in 1896, 1905? Who would have that kind of memory? I don't know. But fortunately, this man left us those tiny snippets of information which has never again, it's completely disappeared off the map 125 years ago, and I've just found it all. Just found it all. That's the end of the talk. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming to this. This is the first time I've done this. I'm not by any means a professional, I'm just winging it. But my recent degree, a scientific degree, has helped me and able to pull everything together and put it in some kind of organised format. The coins there that you're seeing are from the High Peak coal mines in Derbyshire. The Shallcrossers were so wealthy, they owned all these coal mines, they had their own little coin tokens. They were like, when, you know, this is your wages, this is our shop, you can go and spend, like Lord Lever did, you can go and spend your money. You go and spend your money in our shop. And that's it. So, I'm now happy to take any questions, comments, reminiscences. Is Rowena Hume here? Did Rowena Hume come? No, unfortunately, yeah. But Elizabeth, you might have wandered over to the hall.
Yes, we did, and Martin as well. I think we're Ferneliers. I lived on Elner Lane until 1972, born 53. I can only visualise the hall now as a ruin. I can't remember it ever being an intact house.
I saw it burning down, unfortunately, that night. It was
burning down. I think my grandma was in service there, would have been about in the 1920s.
Yeah. I think
What happened in the 18th and 19th centuries then?
18th and 19th, when John Shallcross sold it all off, because there was no heirs, he sold it in the year he died, he sold it all off. And then it passed into other people's hands and inheritors of that will and estate. But they already had loads of estates and everything. They didn't want it. It was just a pile out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So it just got passed and passed around. It was used during the Second World War there was a searchlight up on the land there, some kind of searchlight, which I think we found some kind of stone to do with that, haven't we, in your field, Malcolm, there. And it just went into local people, and then I think it was Ingrid Lichvan's mum and dad who last worked there as maids. They lived in when they got married, and they lived in, and then it just was abandoned. It just fell to pieces. Yeah, rather like Taxel. And like Irwood, yeah, because they were too expensive to run. You know, times had changed after the First World War, when these people who served these rich people, they went off to war, and then many of them never came back again. You know, so lots of these, it was the end of the golden era, so it was finished for big houses, so it was too expensive. Who wanted to afford that? Yes, madam over there.
Hello, strange lady I've never met.
It's my daughter, actually.
Right, okay, so they were the bailiffs of the area, and obviously they used to mete out the justice. So when they used to hang people at Normanwood, and obviously at Oldfield where they had the jail cell for night 4, do you reckon that was part of John estate, or is it off the estate?
Normanwood and that farm there, Oldfield Farm, was in Cheshire.
Yeah.
It wasn't in Derbyshire, so the Shallcross was responsible for Cheshire. But the Taxel side of the land belonged to the Downs family, who are historic Downs of Overton and Taxel. So they had their own jurisdiction, their own, and you can find online the Cheshire tithe maps. I've never found the Derbyshire tithe maps, and it actually, David uses this a lot, don't you, the Cheshire tithe maps. They actually named some fields and name and a number and what acreage was in. It's really, really, but it stops at an absolute dividing line where it crosses the River Goyt. There's nothing for Derbyshire. There's tons of tithe maps, so they had their own jurisdiction and everything. Would have been pretty much the same. The bailiff of the county. Yeah. Yeah, but there was a medieval Taxel lodge. At the side of it, there's Taxel Lodge cottages. Well, they were built in the early 1600s. And I know that because I hoped she'd be here tonight, but she's not come. I know the lady who lives in one of them. And when I went round there to show what I found and to talk about it, I looked at her lodge, and it's from the 1600s. I went round the back, and it was just like looking at one of the early Shallcrosses. And she gave me a piece of pottery that she'd found after the 2019 floods. She said, I'll give you this, you can find it. When the river came off Taxel Edge, it washed the brook and it washed loads of stuff away. And she said, you can have this. And it was a piece of Metropolitan ware, which I found out was Metropolitan ware. It was only made between 1630 up to 1670. It was a plate, and they got like a piping bag and squiggled all kind of lines on it, and then fired it. So that was Metropolitan ware. Because Taxel Lodge cottages, Taxel Lodge was only built in the Victorian times, wasn't it, by Cotton Jodrell, one of the Jodrells and the Shallcrosses. And then after he left, it became the school. It's all gone. But there was already something there, because the lodge cottages and the lord of Taxel Lodge, he would have had his big medieval house there as well. But nobody knows where that is. That's maybe another thing to look into.
Another project.
I know. I'm done with this one now. So does anybody want me to go back over any photos and have a look at anything? Because there's quite a lot, and I've put my heart and soul into this, really, composing all of this, just to show you. suspense here is what is in these books here. I've just saved you the effort of taking it all apart and working out who these people were and what the houses were. And so watch this space, basically. We'll see. You might see me on Time Team, yeah.